Okay guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about a couple different things, but we're going to start out by talking about this question. How do humans get glucose and oxygen? But first, let's remind ourselves, why is it important for humans to get glucose and oxygen? Why are those two things important for humans? Right, so glucose and oxygen are the inputs for this process, which we will remember is called cellular respiration. Just a quick refresher, cellular respiration is the process that creates ATP energy in humans. It happens by glucose and oxygen entering the mitochondria, and they are converted into water, ATP, and carbon dioxide. We remember that ATP is the important one here. That's the energy we need. So in order to make that energy, we need glucose and oxygen. So let's talk about how we get those things into our body. First, we're going to remember that glucose is another word for sugar. That might help us start thinking about how we get that. And we remember that oxygen is around us, in the air around us. So how do we get sugar and oxygen into our body? Well, we need to use our body systems. So these are some of the systems in our body, and we call these body systems or organ systems. And that means they are a group of organs working together. So a group of organs working together to do a complex function. So first of all, let's talk about glucose. Glucose is sugar. So how do we get that sugar into our bodies? We are going to first use this system. That is called the digestive system. So the digestive system, it contains the mouth, esophagus, stomach, the intestines, and the bowels. So the mouth, this is where we bring food into our body. And digest, it means to break down. So the digestive system brings food into our body and breaks it down into usable parts. That starts in our mouth by chewing. We're chewing, that's called mechanical digestion. And then we also have enzymes in our saliva that are chemically breaking down our food. Our food then travels down to our stomach, where it's broken down by chemicals in our stomach. And then it moves through our intestines, all up in here, and it gets further broken down. And in these intestines, along all the walls of the intestines, there are little parts of our intestine that are absorbing the nutrients from our food. So once all that glucose has been broken down from our food, it's absorbed by our intestines, and then it needs to get to our mitochondria. So we'll come back to that in a second. We're just going to talk about how we get oxygen first. So oxygen we get through our respiratory system. Our respiratory system consists of our lungs, also parts up here, like our nasal cavities. So when we breathe in, we are breathing in oxygen. That oxygen travels into our body here, down into our lungs, and really similar to those little pieces in the intestines, there are little pieces all over our lungs called alveoli that absorb that oxygen and send it around our body. So, we also know that we need to breathe out carbon dioxide. You might remember that as an output of cellular respiration. Carbon dioxide is a waste product. Our body needs to get rid of it. So when our body takes in this oxygen, it gets rid of this carbon dioxide. We breathe that out. So the respiratory system and the digestive system bring in oxygen and glucose, and then those oxygen and glucose need to travel to different parts of our body. They travel to our cells by using our circulatory system. This circulatory system, I think of it as like the highway system of our body. It has roads all over our body that send nutrients wherever they need to go. So let's say that you have muscles over here that need to do cellular respiration, so they need their glucose and oxygen. Your lungs and your intestines are going to absorb that oxygen and that glucose, and they're going to use this highway system to transport those two into the cells over here that need them. So we have these little animated red blood cells circulating around. That's to show us that the word circulatory, it means that things are circulating. They're moving around where they need to go. So yeah, this is a delivery system. This is the highway system. It's the roads. However you want to think of it, this system delivers nutrients where our body needs them to go. The final body system that is involved in cellular respiration is the muscular system. This is where many mitochondria live, in our muscles. So we need that ATP to be created inside our muscles. So our O2 travels from our lungs and our glucose travels from our intestines using the circulatory system, and it travels into the muscular system. So in the muscular system, that's actually where cellular respiration happens, in those mitochondria. So those are our body systems that are involved in cellular respiration. We're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about data analysis. So let's zoom in here. We're looking at graphs now. This is a total switch up from the last section. Now we are talking about how to read a graph. So the first thing that we're going to look at when we're reading a graph is the title. Title's right up here. The next thing we're going to look at is the axis labels. So the title is going to tell us what the graph is trying to measure. Up here it says highest temperatures 2011. That's what this graph is measuring. On each axis title, it shows us what each axis is measuring. So down here it says the months. So it's going to be January, February, March, April, etc. Over here it says degrees Celsius. So this side is actually telling us what the temperature is. So this is telling us in 2011, in January, the highest temperature was 0 degrees Celsius. In October of 2011, the highest temperature was about 16 degrees Celsius. So that's how we're going to read a graph. And then when we want to identify a trend, we can look at the overall shape of the line here. So we can say that in 2011, temperatures were increasing from January until, August. And from August until December, temperatures were decreasing. That's the trend we're seeing here. All right, I want you guys to try to answer this question. What is this graph measuring? Yeah, so here we're going to look at the title, donuts sold. We're going to look at the axis label, number of boxes, and per day. So this graph is measuring the number of donuts sold in number of boxes for each day. So we can look at Monday, there were 5 boxes sold. Thursday, there were also 5 boxes sold. This graph, it's a little harder to identify one trend because we can see a decrease, an increase, a decrease, an increase. So we might call that fluctuating. It's not one trend the whole way. The number of boxes sold per day was fluctuating, but overall, it increased. So this graph was fluctuating, but overall it increased. Down here, we have another graph. I want you guys to identify the trend in this graph. Okay, yeah, so we have number of push-ups per day here. Over each day of the week, it's showing us what the number of push-ups were. We definitely see some fluctuation here. And overall, from beginning to end, it's actually staying about the same. We have some days down here that are lower, so we might want to note that when we're talking about a trend. But yeah, we could say the number of push-ups per day was fluctuating, but overall remained the same, with a small dip from Wednesday to Friday. All right, guys, that is your video today. And let's look at our key points here. So number 1, digestive and respiratory systems get glucose and oxygen into our bodies. The circulatory system transports that glucose and oxygen to the muscular system, so it's the transporter. We remember that cellular respiration actually occurs in the muscular system. So digestive, respiratory, circulatory, and muscular, those are our main 4 systems involved in cellular respiration. And then finally, reading graphs includes reading the titles and axis labels, and then looking at data to identify trends. So if you are confused about any of this, I would recommend watching this video back over. If you still have questions, you can shoot us an email, come to office hours, or ask us in class this week. See you in class, guys. Bye.